August 23, 1942, 4:18 p.m. The industrial city of Stalingrad. For the citizens resting on a warm Sunday afternoon, the apocalypse arrives from above. Without warning, the drone of engines fills the sky as the German Luftwaffe's Luftflotte 4 descends. Over the next 48 hours, they drop 1,000 tons of high explosives and incendiary bombs. The wooden houses on the outskirts ignite instantly. Oil tanks on the banks of the Volga River rupture, pouring a river of liquid fire into the water. By nightfall, over 40,000 civilians are dead in the rubble, and the city is a towering inferno visible from 40 miles away. Into this chaos rolls the German 16th Panzer Division, expecting a swift victory. But on the northern outskirts, they encounter an impossible defense. The 1077th Anti-Aircraft Regiment stands in their way. The German tank commanders are stunned when they finally overrun the battery. The fiercely accurate artillery fire pinning them down wasn't coming from hardened veterans. It was coming from young Soviet women, barely out of high school, who had lowered their anti-aircraft guns to fire horizontally at the 30-ton steel beasts. The 1077th is wiped out, but they buy the Soviet Red Army just enough time to dig in. The Blitzkrieg is dead. The siege has begun. Rattenkrieg, September 27, 1942. Deep inside the ruined city center, the battle devolves into a terrifying new kind of combat the Germans call Rattenkrieg, the Rat War. The front lines are no longer measured in miles, but in floors, rooms, and stairwells. On September 27th, a 24-year-old Soviet sergeant named Yakov Pavlov is ordered to take a 4-story apartment building overlooking a crucial square. With only a handful of men, Pavlov clears the building room by room using grenades and bayonets. For the next 58 days, Pavlov's house becomes an impenetrable fortress. The Soviets mine the surrounding rubble, mount machine guns in the blown-out windows, and knock holes through the interior walls to move without being seen. The psychological toll is absolute. German infantrymen are slaughtered trying to cross the street. German tanks cannot elevate their turrets high enough to hit the top floors, nor depress them low enough to shoot into the basements. Sleep is impossible. Combat is so intimate that soldiers can hear their enemies coughing and reloading through the floorboards. General Vasily, commander of the Soviet 62nd Army, orders his men to hug the enemy, staying so close to the German lines that the Luftwaffe cannot bomb them without killing their own men. The city is drowning in blood. The Invisible Hunters, mid-October, 1942. Dawn, the factory district. The rubble of Stalingrad creates a paradise for a different breed of killer, the sniper. For the German infantry, stepping out of cover for even a second means instant death. Chief Master Sergeant Vasily Zaitsev, a former shepherd from the Ural Mountains, turns the ruined landscape into a psychological nightmare for the German 6th Army. Zaitsev does not just shoot to kill, he shoots to break minds. He hides in rusted-out water pipes, beneath the corpses of dead horses, and deep within the shadows of shattered chimneys. He waits for hours, barely breathing in the freezing dust. When he strikes, it is deliberate. He shoots the radio operator first, cutting off communication. He shoots the officer second, cutting off leadership. Then, he leaves the wounded enlisted men screaming in the open, waiting for medics to rush out to save them before putting a bullet through the medics' heads. Over the course of the battle, Zaitsev confirms 225 kills. The constant, invisible threat shatters the nerves of the German soldiers. They write letters home describing a phantom enemy that haunts the ruins, but a much larger phantom is gathering just outside the city. The jaws close. November 19th, 1942, 7:20 a.m. The steppes north and south of Stalingrad. A thick freezing fog blankets the snow. Inside the city, General Friedrich Paulus, commander of the German 6th Army, believes the Soviets are nearly broken. He is entirely wrong. Over the last 2 months, the Soviet High Command has secretly amassed over 1 million men, 14,000 artillery pieces, and nearly 1,000 tanks on Paulus's vulnerable flanks. At exactly 7:20 a.m., the fog lights up. 3,500 Soviet artillery guns unleash an apocalyptic 80-minute barrage. This is Operation Uranus. The Soviet armor tears through the flanks, which are guarded by poorly equipped, freezing Romanian troops. The Romanian Third Army is absolutely vaporized by the sheer kinetic force of the Soviet T-34 tanks. 4 days later, on November 23rd at 4 p.m., the two prongs of the Soviet armored pincers meet at the town of Kalak. The jaws slam shut. General Paulus and over 250,000 Axis soldiers are completely surrounded. Adolf Hitler radios a strict, fatal order from Berlin. The 6th Army will stand firm. There will be no retreat. They are trapped in what the Germans call the Kessel, the cauldron. The White Death, December 24th, 1942, Christmas Eve. Inside the cauldron, the temperature plummets to -30 degrees Celsius. For the encircled German Sixth Army, the horror of combat is replaced by the agonizing slow death of starvation and frostbite. Hermann Göring had promised the Luftwaffe could airdrop 500 tons of supplies a day to keep the army alive. They rarely managed to drop 100. Wilhelm Hoffmann, a diarist in the 267th Infantry Regiment, watches his unit disintegrate. His diary entries shift from arrogance in August to pure despair in December. By Christmas, the men are boiling leather belts for broth. They slaughter and eat all of their pack horses, digging frozen equine bones out of the snow to gnaw on them. Dysentery and typhus sweep through the cellars. Men freeze to death in their sleep, their gangrenous toes snapping off inside their boots. Suicides skyrocket. Wounded soldiers, left in freezing triage tents without morphine or bandages, freeze to the floor. The Soviet loudspeakers set up around the perimeter play a relentless, looping audio track of a ticking clock, followed by a dark voice in German. Every 7 seconds, a German soldier dies in Russia. Stalingrad is a mass grave. The Annihilation, January 31st, 1943, 7:15 a.m. The basement of the Wehrmacht department store. The Sixth Army is completely dead on its feet. Soviet tanks are freely rolling through the streets, crushing German bunkers point blank. Down in the dark, freezing basement of the Wehrmacht department store, Soviet Lieutenant Fyodor Ilchenko walks into the headquarters of the German command. Sitting on his cot, unwashed, defeated, and shivering in the dark, is Friedrich Paulus. Just hours earlier, Hitler had promoted Paulus to field marshal, a thinly veiled order to commit suicide, as no German field marshal had ever surrendered in history. Paulus refuses to die for a lost cause. At 7:15 a.m., he formally surrenders. 2 days later, on February 2nd, the last isolated pockets of German resistance lay down their arms. The silence that falls over Stalingrad is deafening. Over 2 million people, Soviets, Germans, Romanians, Hungarians, Italians, and civilians, are dead, wounded, or missing. The city is a pulverized graveyard of twisted steel and frozen corpses. Of the 91,000 Axis soldiers who march out of the ruins and into Soviet captivity, fewer than 6,000 will ever survive the Siberian labor camps to see their homes again. The myth of German invincibility is broken forever. The turning point of the Second World War was forged in the freezing blood of Stalingrad.